Okay. Alright. Okay, so this is going to be the last part of the wiring, which is the LCD screen itself. So at this point, you should have everything connected and hooked up except for the LCD screen. And this is good because all that stuff is on the bottom. So the screen is the very top item, at least the main part of the printer. So get right into this. Just a heads up, this screen is one that I destroyed, so if it looks a little destroyed, that's why. This one did not survive. From the back of the screen, make sure that you see these two stickers over here. This should be some kind of model number sticker, I can't remember exactly what, and this should say Sharp on it, because if it doesn't, it's not genuine, it's a cheap knockoff. And the link I put in the bill of materials is for a grade A screen, so make sure that this iPad screen is grade A condition, because if it's not, you're going to have white pixels that are not supposed to be white, and that's going to create a nightmare for your prints because it's going to cure resin where there is nothing, and that will cause many problems down the road. Just one little blob of resin will prevent the plate, the printing platform, from sitting flat on the screen. So when you first start printing, it won't be an issue, but 3 hours down the road, when you take your print off the platform and try and print something else, your platform will not go down and touch the screen, which means you'll get a print failure. So make sure you get a grade A screen. When you're looking at the bottom of the screen here, this is basically, we're going to go over how to take the screen out of the backlight panel, because you don't need the panel. You need to take it out of the way without destroying the screen. So when you're looking down on the top of the screen here, you're going to see a piece of black tape that covers this right here. So it's going to go from here to here. You won't actually see this little heatsink electrical strip. So just gently peel up the corner of the tape here. Man, I cannot draw. There we go. Peel up the corner of the tape and just gently tear it off and remove it. Just throw it away, you don't need it. Next thing we're going to do is we are going to hone in over here on the backlight cables, because we don't need the backlight that comes with the screen. We're going to replace that with our blue backlight, so we can safely throw this part of the screen away. So you're going to look down here, and you're going to carefully take this little ribbon cable. See how it's folded on top here? You're going to fold it this direction, right? Carefully fold it that direction so it's out of the way, and you're going to see this little ribbon cable. This one's cut because I cut it, but this is the backlight power right here that runs the backlights, but we don't need this. So you're going to see these two little connections here. There are little strips right here, these little micro strips. There's one right here, and there's one right here. Those are actually latches, so you can put a tiny screwdriver in from this direction, or you can use your fingernail, and those latches will flip upward this direction. So you're going to unlatch both of them. Your next step would be this one. So after you've unlatched them, you can see that I've pulled them out. They've both come out this direction. Now we just safely disconnected the backlight, and it's no longer connected. Next thing, you're going to take that little strip that we took the tape off. You're going to carefully fold it. It is delicate, so don't go crazy with it. Fold it backwards that direction until you get it to disconnect completely. And it'll just kind of flip around back here. It's still going to be connected right here. These are electrical connections, so don't break these connections. This is the top of the screen. As you can see, I completely destroyed this for the purposes of testing, but here's that strip we just flipped around and faced upside down. And you're going to have to cut the screen out of the back case, which might sound intimidating, but it's actually pretty easy. You can see right here, see this white line? That's the joint between the screen over here and the case, or the backlight case over here. And you can see it's still going over here. It's the point where the two separate. On the left side, we'll have to zoom in here in a minute, but let me switch to the next image. It's a little bit closer. So here's that edge. So this would be the front of the screen. This would be the right side of the screen, and this would be the left side. So we're looking, obviously this is the top of the screen, we're looking down on it. So you can basically just run your fingernail. This is just some kind of black tape that they put over the edge here. Just run your fingernail along here this direction, and that way you can safely find the seam, because you'll feel the tape drop down, and just run your nail back and forth a couple times to make the tape stretch. And then you're just going to take an X-Acto knife and start at the corner here and slowly follow that little ridge that you've made with your fingernail all the way across. And it doesn't take much pressure. All you got to do is slice the tape. So you're going to slice that one, and then the right side is right here. Get rid of my writing here. So the other seam is over here on the right. You can see it's right here. So just run your nail down, same process, cut it with an X-Acto knife gently. And then the left side is a little bit further away. So there's going to be, I think it's like 4 or 5 millimeters here to the edge, and then the seam is right here. So find it with your fingernail, stretch the tape by running up and down a little bit like this, and then cut it with the X-Acto knife. And then from that point, all you have to do is carefully lift it out. So you're going to make sure that the screen is facing upwards. You're looking down on it. This is the frame here that we were just talking about. So you're going to lift up the screen carefully. Wait for these little, there's a bunch of films here in the back. These films right here, I've already put them on the back of the screen, but they have these tabs here, and these little tabs are mounted into the frame here and here to keep them from moving around, basically to keep them lined up. So just carefully lift it straight up, flip it over, and put it to the side over here. And the film should be sitting here. If they went with the screen, fine, let them go with it. But if not, you want to carefully get a little screwdriver or something, or maybe like a popsicle stick, put it underneath the edge, gently flex them until they move this direction. And those little tabs that we pointed out right here, they will slide out. You might want to wear some nitrile gloves so you don't leave any fingerprints on these films, because these films are what are going to carry all the light through the screen. So ideally, you don't want any dust, no hair, no fingerprints, nothing. So carefully keep them in the same order, and remember that this is the top of the film. So when you take these films out, if you have to for some reason, and add them to the screen, make sure and flip them over so that the top here is facing away from you or down, right? We don't want to change the order of these films. We want to make sure they stay in the same order. There should be 4 pieces of film. There should be a diffuser film right against the back of the screen. There should be 2, almost like, they're not polarizers, but they're what they call microprism film. They capture light that's coming from instant angles, such as the side, and they redirect it to go up through the screen. So you're going to have 1 diffuser on the back of the screen first. That's number 1. You're going to have 2 other films. Don't change their position or their order if you can help it, because they only work in a certain order. So don't drop them or change the order that they come out in. And then on the very back here, the last film would be another diffuser film. So at that point, you're going to make sure that these little tabs all line up that we were talking about, because you're going to have 4 different films. So just gently align these on each side. Make sure that there's the correct spacing to the frame of the actual screen. This is the LCD screen itself. The backlight part is gone. And once you have them all lined up, this is the right side. So just line these up, and you can see here that I have them perfectly centered. You can see the corner right here. I have them perfectly centered on both sides. When that's done, it should look something like this. I would highly recommend take a little piece of clear tape and put it right here over this tab. Put it over this tab just up to the edge here, and then fold it this direction over so that it goes around the side of the screen and up, and do that for each tab. That way these films cannot fall off the screen and they won't become misaligned later on. So that'll keep them on the screen. It'll make the next step a lot easier. So now, after you've got the films taped on, you're going to take your piece of plexiglass that backs the screen, And this piece of plexi here, you can see it here, it's kind of whitish color in the background. Your plexiglass is going to be clear. This is actually a milky white one that I was using for testing, but turns out clear works much better, so I ditched the milky one. So it's going to look like this though, the position. So you're going to position the screen roughly in this position. There's maybe 2 or 3 millimeters here in the back. And this little cable, this little chipboard is just going to free hang back here in the printer. You can tell, let me switch to the next image here so you can see a little better. Is it this one? I don't know if you guys can tell, but there's a little bit more of a space on the right side than there is on the left. And that is because right here, you can't see it, but right here is where the actual edge of the pixels is. But on the right side of the screen, it's right here, like 2 millimeters. I can't draw straight, but it's about 2 millimeters from the edge of the screen. So basically, there's a larger dead zone over here on the left that is not actually pixels, so you want to shift this thing about 2 millimeters that direction, 2 millimeters to the left from a perfect center position. And then this area here, this area here in the front is roughly 5 millimeters. This side over here is probably like 6 or 7, and this would be maybe 4. I'm just guessing, memory guessing, but it should look like that. And then you're also, at this point, you're also going to take some more clear tape and just put a little piece right here, right? So it doesn't actually go up where the pixels are, it just stops here on the edge of the frame. And put another little piece over here. And that way you can just kind of keep the screen in place so it can't move around on the plexiglass. And you can pick them up without them changing position. And at that point, you are going to be here. And basically you're just going to set it down into your 3D printed platform. So you should have this platform already assembled. I have just some regular electrical tape here between the platform, front and back. So you're going to set your plexiglass piece down inside. That little chipboard there is just hanging in the back. We're going to put a piece of tape over it when it's done. And that ribbon cable, there's a little slot here in the print. It just goes down through that slot, so gently put it through the slot. You're going to insert the back end first. You're going to basically put it down like this. Make sure the cable goes into the slot. And then you're going to set this front end down this direction until it drops in. And then just slide it forward, make sure it's slid all the way forward until this is touching the edge of the print. And then you just come along here and basically put a piece of electrical tape on each edge. And the electrical tape, you want the tape to go up over the edge of the frame, so if we were putting tape on the left, the electrical tape would stop here and it would go out this direction onto the print. You don't want it actually coming up here and blocking your screen because that'll take away from your area. And one thing worth noting at this point is, since we're almost done here with the printer build itself, except for the case, part of the reason this printer is so versatile is you can use any size LCD screen you want that's less than 200 by 150 millimeters. So this iPad screen is 200 millimeters across, and it's 150 millimeters front to back. So let's say you found a cell phone screen that had a higher pixel density, right? And you didn't care about having a big print area. You could use the smaller screen and mount it in the exact same fashion on top of this piece of plexiglass acrylic, and it would work identical. There would be no difference. The printer would work the same. Yes, your platform would be larger than the screen, but actually that doesn't matter. If you have a large vat and a large platform and a small screen, it really won't change the printer at all. The only difference is you'll have to put a little bit more resin into the vat, but the printer will work exactly the same. And obviously if the resolution of the screen is better, then your prints will be better resolution as well. So you can use any screen on here that's less than the iPad in size, and you would mount it exactly the same. This is how it's going to look from the back. So after we get it all taped down, when you're looking from the back side, or the bottom side rather, this is looking up, so we're looking through the plexiglass. You can't actually see the plexiglass because it's clear. This is the back of the screen here, right? And these are the bolts that go up through the platform to hold the vat. So at this point we're pretty much done. The only thing we have to do is connect it. This is another crucial spot in the build. You want to make sure that this little ribbon cable here that connects, this actually is how you connect the LCD itself to that HDMI controller board we showed you earlier. this ribbon cable has to be put in the correct direction. It only has copper contacts right here exposed on one side. So obviously the copper contacts are facing us right now, but if you look at the other side of this plug, it's black. There's no copper. So when you connect this to this is the little ribbon cable that we talked about earlier. See these little wires here? These are the ones that connect directly to the HDMI board. This little latch right here, once again, this little black bar right here is the latch. You flip it up and it releases the cable. You flip it down and it clamps it. You want to make sure that this cable here that we just showed you, the copper has to be on the back side here. So we want the copper on the back side. So when you're putting this plug in here, when you're pushing it in this direction into this slot, you're going to flip this little bar up to make sure it's released, and you're going to make sure that you do not see any copper. You want the copper on the back side where you cannot see it. So make sure this copper part here is facing away from you when you slide it into this plug. If it's facing up, you will also fry the screen because the contacts are backwards. It will destroy the screen. So that's it. This is the, get rid of my scribble notes here. This is the little control panel for controlling the screen. So at this point you should have it temporarily mounted on the top, maybe 1 or 2 bolts holding it in place. I put this on the bottom front of the printer frame, so this would be the front of the printer here, and this is the bottom rail, right? So when you open the door, this is right here accessible. You don't have to do anything. This is the main power button, menu button, up and down, and this functions as auto right here. This functions as an auto white balance, color balance, but what this actually does, it doubles as a back button. So when you're going through the menus, if you're trying to figure out how to go back, just tap the auto button. The only time this auto button sets the screen itself is when you don't have a menu open and you hit it. Like if you just turn the printer on, the screen turns on, and you reach down here and hit the auto button, it's going to set the RGB values and the brightness and the contrast and all that automatically, which you don't want. So when you have the menus open already, like if you already tapped this, if the menu's open, you can use this auto button to go back through the menus. But if you don't have a menu open, don't touch this because you don't want this. So, oh, one last note. Make sure and put double-sided tape underneath this that does not conduct electricity, which most tape doesn't, at least at low voltage. So put a piece of double-sided tape underneath this because there's electrical contacts on the back of this circuit board, and if they touch this frame right here, they will short out to each other and you'll fry it. You'll fry the whole board. So put something under there so it doesn't short out. And these menus are in Chinese or Japanese. I don't know which language this is exactly, but it's not English. So you can't exactly read them, so that's why I took pictures of them. But essentially this, you're going to select the top one here, and you are going to open it up. You are going to set the top value here to 0, which is the brightness. So you want the brightness set to 0, and this 100 here is the contrast. You want the contrast set to 100, but you want the brightness set to 0. And the reason for that is we want the black part of the screen where we're not printing as black as possible. And then you're going to open up the second menu here with the paintbrush next to it. Get rid of my notes. And you are going to set, these are the saturation values for the RGB. You're going to set all of these to 255. So this one here, which is red, this is green, this is blue. Just pump them all the way up to 255, which will give you full saturation. So this will allow as much light as possible through the LCD crystals. And this will give you the absolute fastest print times. And since we dropped the brightness values to 0 already, we'll also get the darkest blacks, which is important because if we allow too much light to bleed through the black areas, it'll start curing the resin where we don't have any parts, so we'll end up wasting resin, and we don't want that. So That's pretty much it. At this point, all of your electronics should be done. All you have to do at this point to test the printer is you have to connect the HDMI port to a HDMI port on a PC, connect your USB cable, turn it on, make sure all of the fans are running, make sure everything's connected. One thing I forgot to mention is the screen will be black at this point. So those pictures I just showed you right here, you have to turn the backlight for the screen on first before you can see the screen, because there is no backlight on the screen itself. So when you first turn on the printer, check all the fans, check everything else, make sure it's all running. And once you connect the HDMI cable, you need to open up, you could use, I think it's the G-code editor, or not the G-code editor, it's the Arduino IDE. You can use the Arduino IDE to connect to the printer. I use Repetier Host, which is a print controller for FDM printers, but since this is a Arduino board, it's the same connection. So what you can do is open up basically any printer software that allows you to send G-code commands to an Arduino. Just connect it, and once you've connected to the Arduino board, send a let me write this real quick for you guys. You're going to send an M106 command. And if you have a good connection and you're connected to the Arduino through the printer software, when you send this G-code, it'll turn the backlight on. So you should see all of your LEDs light up, right? So it should look like a meteor taken off. And that will light up your screen so that you can set the menus. And if you want to turn the backlights off, if they're getting too hot or you just want to turn them off, just type in M107, send that G-code, and the M107, write it down here so you guys can see it easier. The M107 will turn the lights off. So it's really that simple. M106 turns them on, M107 turns them off, and that's how you turn the screen on. So if you start at the printer and the screen is black, don't freak out. It just means that your backlights aren't turned on. These are pictures of the completed printer, or mostly completed printer. Obviously the screen is not on here yet, but this is all the electronics connected. You can see all the captive nuts in here, etc., etc. This is a side view. You can see the power supply here in the back. These are all my LEDs, so it should look something like this when you're done. And the one other thing I was going to show you was that section I skipped. See if I can find it here. This one. I didn't go over this part in the last video in part 3 because I hadn't designed it yet, but I found that this fan here in the back, it used to be laying right here where you see the white touching the frame, and it was supposed to pull hot air up from the bottom of the case into the top because there's no platform back here. This is open. So the idea was that you could draw hot air from the bottom, right, up here where it's cooler, and you could equalize the temperature so the bottom wouldn't be so hot and the top would be warmer, and that way the temperature would be more equal between the top and bottom, which is important for the resin. But it wasn't working very well, so I designed this fan duct you see, and this will be uploaded to Thingiverse, so you need to print this to install it. But basically you're going to have this bottom part of the duct that has little clips on it, so it'll clip into this top part, and the top part is separate. So the top part, you'll mount the fan here, just bolt it directly in, boom, boom. As long as you have 50mm spacing back here like we went over in the frame build, this should fit no problem. So you're going to just slide it straight down through the frame, and it doesn't really attach to anything. It doesn't need to. If you want to put a little piece of double-sided tape underneath it to hold it in place, go for it. And then you're just going to basically take the duct here, slide it up, clip it in, and after it clips in, that's it. So this allows the fan to actually draw the hot air out of the bottom here and pull it up into the top of the printer. And we'll go over why that's important in the next part of the series, but you're going to need to print and install this before you put the backlights in, because this is the rail right here. This rail holds the backlights. The backlights are going to be kind of up here. Once you put the backlights in, you can't really get to this area. So this is a view from the side. So if we get rid of my notes, this is looking from the side again. You can see the power, the AC power inputs over here. And this is another shot looking down from the top. So that's going to be it, guys, for part 4. I hope you enjoyed it. Can't wait to see how your printer builds are coming along.